I'm seeing a lot of content, whether from Twitter or YouTube or whatever, you know, black male centered uh, channels and accounts. They're talking about Pookies. They're talking about the way the black community is run, and it's not, it doesn't care about black men. The black community, only cares about single mothers and doing things for single mothers, and they don't care about who the father of the child is, and they just want any man to take care of their kids, and you know, uh, they're okay with having being knocked up by the men they call Pookies, aka the street type of black dude, who wants to, he doesn't care about going to jail, doesn't care about having face tats, saying, uh, we'll get into fights over nothing, quick to want to, try to kill somebody or whatnot over nothing. This is what we're talking about now, and you know, and I feel like, hey, that's a good thing. In some ways, it's a good thing to bring light to it because for decades, black men have been put under an umbrella, a very small umbrella. We all have to fit under it. You got to be a street black dude, and or you get characterized as a street black dude. No matter no matter how not street you are. You could be as you know uptight as Brian Gumble. You could be as uptight as, Carlton, and people still try to put you under, a street umbrella. Try to talk to you like something that's going on outside. And not every black man wants to be like that, especially nowadays. Now dudes is like, yo, like, that's not who I am. I'm a man that works. I'm a man who works a regular job, go home, what I'm saying, to my functional house. I don't have shit thrown everywhere. My house doesn't smell like weed. What I'm saying? I'm not out here playing video games all day. Uh, I'm not looking to go out here and scam people. I'm not, I'm just living straight in now, go to work, do what I got to do, you know, pay the bills and live my life the right way. So these black men are tired of being stereotyped with the what they call the pookie. Like I said, the street type, criminal type black man. Because these guys, they're always getting in. Every time they do something, a lot of black men are now noticing that this is taken and put on all black men. It's just the things these guys do. This criminal class of black men, who are a small percentage of the black community, and a small percentage of black males, do a lot of damage. They're the ones doing the main job, knocking these women up. And I believe they have. I think Kevin Samuels had he had the data to show like you know like like 19% of men is like producing a large majority, a large percentage of the children. So when women are like, oh my gosh, all these black men, no, 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 it's like now black men are like, hold on, it's a certain type of dude y'all are getting knocked up by. Like there's so many stories where like four men will have like 70 kids with like all these different women, and all these women will be fighting over the baby daddy and all this type of stuff. And that's what you got going on. That's what's been going on for decades. But black men couldn't tell that because we didn't have control of the narrative at all. We didn't have control of these major networks and these TV shows that was out here slandering. Back in the days of when talk shows were the thing. Was the way you could get your voice out. Black men didn't have control of that. You had a bunch of simps. You had a bunch of you know scorned women. You had a bunch of people that coming with slanted judgment, already had their mindset about who black men were. And black men back in the day was definitely seen as thugs walking around in groups causing problems. You know this is why I'm from New York, so coming up, I always heard about stop and frisk. You had to worry about that. You had to make sure you didn't have anything on you. But I also understand why they did that. What I'm saying? You have these criminal types of walking around, what I'm saying, and they're out here looking to cause trouble, looking for somebody to go and arm to 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 get off on. Whether they get something out of it, they get a reputation for doing bad things to random people, or whether it's just they're just crazy and they get off on hurting people, whatever. These guys, they're going around wherever they're at, whatever city they're at, and they're doing things to people, trying to get whatever out of it, and it's a cost to society. These guys are robbing people, they're jumping people. What I'm saying? They're committing crimes to groups of people who can't defend themselves. Some of them are beating up old Asian ladies in San Francisco and stuff like that. They're doing all types of things like that. That's their behavior. So the black community, productive black men in the black community, should have been, like, hey, we don't support that. We don't support that. We don't like that type of behavior, and we don't stand with that. And that's not who the majority of black men are. And so that's my take on these criminal types of dudes. Um, I feel like if we really wanted to get rid of these types of dudes, you know, like society, we could have got rid of them. Like they're just there because, and they're there because people see them as some type of status. I know it's even white people like look up to these street dudes and think they're doing something. They think, oh man, he's some people think they're brave. Some people think they're like a sign of masculinity. And to me, hell no. Like I don't see no King Von as a hero or some kind of a warrior or something like that. Like, these are just crush out dummies who want to fight over music, or how they're seen in the streets, and they want to be seen as the dude in their neighborhood or whatever. They're just, like I said, you're just crash outs. What I'm saying? They don't bring value to their neighborhood. They take value from their neighborhood. Literally, like they by their actions they devalue their neighborhoods, and that's why normal black men should want them out of any neighborhood. Should not want them in any neighborhood they're in. Whenever you see, if you can get your money together and get out your neighborhood, and you can move to a productive neighborhood, you should you should definitely do everything in your power to make sure that type of behavior stays out. You know, you should not be like all black people matter type person. Like that's got to stop. You got to be, you got to be like, hey, no, like you're a criminal. You know what I'm saying? Like you need to be on your best behavior. If you're gonna be if you're gonna be changed, and you're gonna show that, hey, I'm here to improve and work and be productive, then yeah, of course everybody can change if as long as it's whatever you've done in your past is not too bad. But otherwise you could come around and you work, you do what you got to do, and you make it. Like I've been in you know work and stuff like that around people who've been to jail, but they don't, that's in their past. Now they're changed. They moved on to other things. They've done better. But if you're still glorifying the same lifestyle and you still want to run around doing the same thing, people should not be praising you. People should look down on that. It's crazy how that's something that's really only been I'm only hearing like being said in the past few years. Like people was condoning all types of BS going on. They're shouting out all types of gangsters and talking about how these dudes is going to change this and change that, and how you know the streets wasn't going to be the same without these dudes, and da 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 da. But now it seems like people are tired of some of these street dudes. Is it because the music's not popping like it used to? Because people are followers. People love street dudes when like they're coming out with hit songs that people like Young Jeezy coming out with his songs. And people feel like, oh man, that's like he's talking about breaking down a brick and selling it and all that. People love that. When he was in that flowing and talking about the streets. People, same thing with Gucci, old Gucci. He's talking about the streets and selling dope and all that. Everybody was loving him because they felt like it was good. It was some good hard music. You could be in the club dancing to it and all that. You know, doing your thing. Everybody was loving it. But if the street music isn't hitting like the drill music isn't hitting like the trap music uh, 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 of the late 2000s, if it's not hitting like that, then people's not really going to be on the bandwagon like that. They're going to be like, oh, just get these dudes out of here. I think that's more of what it is. People like are like taking out their frustration on these dudes now because they're like whatever like, and also because now it's like cool to be on the Charleston White, Candace Owens type talk. So now people kind of turning on them, and now everybody wants to be an upright, narrow, or pretend to be like now we're back to being upright and narrow, and now we got morals. Now now everybody wants to talk about protecting the community. I'm like, y'all wasn't saying this shit like 10 years ago, man. Get the fuck out of here. Now everybody's talking about community, blah blah blah. I'm like, all right. But I guess it's a good thing, to talk about these pookies, to be like, hey, you know, we can't identify with this type of behavior. We need to be productive. We need to stop being antisocial. We need to have better representation. Black men need to be more serious about their image, man. You need to stop being like okay with the representation that we've been handed. It matters. The way you're viewed in the world matters. And you don't want to be seen as a criminal and things like that. You want to have the image of a productive man that can take care of himself and his family and all these types of things. Uh, and yeah, so black men got to, you got to have your black male media, things like that to hold it down. So you can push away these outdated narratives. And then, the next thing is, you also got to deal with these women, because all they do is brag about how they love street niggas. And, I've seen multiple video or multiple things with them, you know, where there be dudes in prison, they will all be under the comments like, oh my gosh, you know, my man, they'll be bragging about how they love street niggas and dudes in jail and they're talking to a dude in jail. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got to stop pretending these women are some type of, dandelions or something. These women are participants in the dysfunction, big time. There would not be so many dudes that wanted to be part of the street lifestyle. To me, what the biggest reason why a lot of these dudes in this lifestyle because they want to impress these damn low down project minded public housing hood rats, man. They're trying to impress these chicks, and that's why all these bum ass dudes that want to do that have the problems that they have in life. You're trying to impress you know, some sloppy, low standard having ass chick who loves dysfunction, and that's why these chicks keep breeding with these dudes. I call it Section 8 breeding. All these low down chicks finding these hood dudes, and they just pop out a bunch of kids that neither of them can really take care of, and the kids grow up into dysfunction, and they become more dysfunctional people. People are like, oh, who's raising these kids? I'm like, really, nobody. They're just growing up, just out here, and circumstances just have them. And so is they become victims to their circumstances, and they're gonna grow up with a mom who obviously loves street niggas, had kids with street niggas, and they're gonna grow up emulating the street niggas. Like, what else would they end up doing? You're growing up in public housing, growing up without all the money, growing up with a loudmouth, dumbass mom. You're gonna grow up and you're gonna idolize, the shit that you know you think is real for you to become. And so, that's the disconnect right there. It's not, not every black person understands what it's like to come up in public housing. You know, there's a lot of black people, white people, and all that don't understand the dysfunction. But yeah, growing up in public housing, creates its own set of issues, man. Because there's obstacles and things that are in there that can create certain type of development in the youth. So when people are trying to talk to the youth and all that, it's like, yo, like, you know, talk to them is whatever. It's gonna be they're gonna hear it. It's gonna be like, yeah. But then after a while, they're gonna go back to their reality, and there it is. They're gonna see, what I'm saying, homeless people. They're gonna see, you know, dudes they know that is involved in certain street activity. They're gonna see how people respect them in real life. They're gonna see how women are giving them all the action, and the women that the young girls, they're gonna see the women that they look up to give all the street dudes the action and talk about them highly. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna see that in real life, and they're gonna be like, oh, I should look up to that dude, and they're gonna be like, oh, I should get a dude like that, and I should move to get attention from those types of dudes. And so the cycle continues. That's how this cycle goes in reality, you know. So yeah, that's why things are the way they are. And if you're a productive man, you shouldn't be trying to fight with these women over anything. They make it known they want a street dude. I'm not about to fight with none of them. I'm not about to argue. Oh, I'm not about to switch it up and act like a street dude or whatever. Fuck out of here. You want a street dude? I'm out. Or if I pick up on the fact that you think I'm not like, I don't seem like a dude that wants to crash out, or I'm not talking some wild shit, when I'm around you, whatever. And that's instant, and then that's like a jawbreaker or a deal breaker for the chick. I don't give a damn. I'm not about to crash out for no bird, especially at this point in my life. I'm not about to impress no damn airhead chick. That's it. What y'all trying to impress? Y'all probably trying to impress these fucking airheads with nothing in their brains. These chicks ain't got nothing going on. They don't think about anything intelligent. Why are you putting your life and your reputation, and your future in jeopardy? Trying to go out here and move this type of way to impress some bird. Investing in the street life ain't shit, man. Stop trying to impress these birds. Um, put the street shit down. Stop trying to do that. Stop trying to put on the street nigga accent and all that to try to impress these chicks. Be you all the way, and if one man stand on business instead of being weak, we will get things going, and we will leave chicks like that in the dust. If they don't have anybody to save them, and they realize it's going to get dark, that's going to be a beautiful thing. It gets dark for them, and if the street dudes go to jail and all that, for doing the dumb things they're doing, if men that are move to productive communities, finally, have the voice of these communities, that's going to be a beautiful thing. That's what we have to do. Keep being productive, keep, standing on business. Don't go out here changing up for nobody. You know what I'm saying? Hold your image down and do what you have to do uh, to get, to the better place you need to be in your life. And that's all I got for y'all. That's my response to the street image that's placed upon black men and how we should respond to it. And moving forward, you know, we gotta be vehement that there's a line to be made. Just like you can tell a hillbilly apart from a regular white person. Well, guess what? You can tell this ghetto hood rat apart from regular, schmegular, productive black men. And black men will have standards going forward and will not deal with you know lace front wearing, cackling hyena women. All right, we're not here for that. We don't have to deal with your problems. We don't care about what you got going on. None of that. That's how it's got to be. And I'm out.